The Voices of the Valley, Episode 2. My guest today is Mr. Samuel Chen. He is a bio-faculty member here at Moraine Valley. And thank you for coming on today.
Thanks.
How are you?
Appreciate it. It's glad to be here.
Awesome.
Doing well. Thanks. Appreciate it.
No problem. So my first question for you, if you don't mind, can I ask your age?
Sure. I'm 46 years old.
46 years old. So I'm 20. If you could tell yourself when you were 20, if you have any piece of advice, what do you think you'd tell yourself?
Bitcoin? Well, what type of advice? I mean, I would think.
Like if you think about back to when you were 20, what you were worried about, what you were thinking about, your goals and stuff like that, what do you think you would go back and tell yourself as a man of 46?
Sure. One of the things that I enjoy is being an explorer.
Yeah.
And you feel at 20 you have to have it all together.
Mm-hmm.
And life is both long and short. It's long if you're really exploring, if you think, oh, you know what, I have to get my job at 20. That's not true. You have to get it right, and you have to make your decision of what you want to do for the rest of your life at 20. Say, no, life is long enough that you're able to do a lot of different things. Long enough that you can try a career and then not like it, and then try it for a season, and shift. And so studying, and you can always learn, you can always pick up. And so it's long like that. But it's short if you waste it. If you waste, be like, I'm just going to play Fortnite all day, which I enjoy. But it's not like, if I decided to play all day, all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, how am I 30 years old and not have anything?
Exactly.
So life is both long and short. Long enough to let you do anything you want. Short if you waste it.
Yeah.
So that's probably the best advice I would give my 20 self. And then Bitcoin.
And Bitcoin. Is there any careers that you went for while you were younger that didn't pan out the way you did? How'd you find your path to where you are now?
Yeah, it was fairly circuitous. I have some cultural influences and pressures. Being Asian, it was either I was a doctor, a lawyer, or a businessman.
Oh, wow.
But it didn't matter what grade you were taking or what major you were taking, you were all pre-med. Even if you're pre-law, you're pre-med first. And so part of it was I really enjoyed being, not necessarily pre-med, but exploring the human body and the complexities that it has of that. Didn't really like political stuff. I didn't really like history as much. And noticed myself just not engaged with that. But math were strong suits. Partly because my parents could help me with those. They couldn't really help me with U.S. history as they didn't experience any U.S. history or learn U.S. history because they immigrated here. And so I would say having multiple jobs, being able to do a ton of different things, getting exposed, and then having at least a basis to understanding what things. I worked retail for a long time. I worked Baskin Robbins, scooped ice cream for a ton, did landscaping, did painting, did manual labor throughout high school, and even in college we come back and paint a lot. And so having those things and then dipping my toes in teaching a little bit actually was what shifted my mentality when I was like, I really want to go into medical school. But then I was like, so I have 15 minutes or to 30 minutes maybe at the most with a patient to get their story, to know where I can fill in some holes to help people along. Or I can have 17 weeks teaching. So that was a part of what allowed me to think maybe I should be a teacher. And then even trying to figure out if I wanted to, is it only teaching? I was fascinated with medicine for a long time. What aspects of that? And so that's partly why I went into even nursing.
That's really interesting how, you found teaching later and that really shifted, that really fulfilled you more than what you were originally going for.
It did.
Yeah. Well, what would you tell someone that's getting into nursing now? Any kind of advice you'd give them or?
So it depends on what type of advice. I could give logistical advice and say, well, you want to make sure you do well in your classes.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
You want to make sure that you're not just learning it to get the grade because it matters at the end. But other parts are, don't ever lose your compassion. Nursing is hugely, hugely a human-to-human interaction. And without seeing somebody else's need, if it just becomes a job, then you shouldn't be in nursing. And that's where they had all these crazinesses, right? When people needed help and they didn't really know what AIDS, how it was spread, right? People would be like, well, then we were just going to let you die. It's like, that's terrible. Like, you can't do that. And so to be able to hear and to persist and to say, well, there's a human on this other side, and what can I actually give them? What can I support? What can I? And so that's hugely nursing. And so without the compassion, without the, I would say even love for people, nursing probably is not the choice for you, even though it pays well.
Yeah.
And even though it's busy, you lose sight of all that.
Yeah.
So those are the two probably parts.
Yeah, I never really thought about how much compassion you would need to be a nurse, especially doing that every day. And I really just thought of it as like, more like a customer service kind of job, because that's what I do. Yeah. Then it's just like, but it's way more in depth than that, because after seeing, my mom in the hospital bed or, my sister as well, just like knowing like you have to like kind of create a relationship with the patient and then also, be there, for them at their women's. It's very interesting to see all that stuff go down.
Yeah, that's actually one of the first things that they teach us at nursing school.
Yeah.
When I went to Rush, they asked the question, what is the difference between medicine and nursing? Mm-hmm. And so people were like, well, nurses carry out the doctor's orders, or nurses are just trying to do the task of being able to do that. And people are like, no, if medicine is providing an intervention for the sickness, so say for instance, like if your blood is too high in potassium, so you give a drug to take care of that potassium. That's medicine. But nursing is, how do you allow the human response to that intervention so that you can have the best healing? So immediately, like that example of too high potassium is a drug called K-exolate. And so you take that K-exolate and it gets rid of your potassium out through your bowels.
Okay.
And so it's a very powerful laxative. I mean, you get your raincoat on, get your galoshes on, and get ready. When you give this, you're like, okay, here we go. But patients will then say, no, forget it. I don't want to take that. Why would I want to take this? I'm just going to soil myself. There's no way. This is gross. This makes me, I have cramping. I'm not going to do that. And so the intervention becomes useless, because if the patient won't ever take it, it doesn't matter. And so what's the nurse's job? My job is to nurse the human response to that intervention. So I say, hey, you know what? There's no shame in crapping your pants. Yeah. I'm going to make sure no one shames you. So immediately I give you that compassion. Yeah. I'll clean you up as soon as it happens, so you don't have to be embarrassed. I'll make sure you have clean clothes. I'll make sure everything else is spick and span. So even when you do it, when you can't even make it to the bathroom and you don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. You just jump back into bed and get better. Yeah. So all of a sudden this intervention on the human response makes that drug work so much better. It's like, right, if you just hand that drug to a person, and yes, it'll do its job, but they'll not take it, they're going to still have the hyperkalemia or high potassium. Yeah. But a nurse is there, gives it on time, makes sure everything's there, so it's the human response.
Exactly. So it wouldn't have the same reaction if it wasn't for that nurse.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow, very interesting. Yeah. With the pandemic and everything, what would you give nurses advice now wanting to go? And have you seen like an up in nursing, or have you seen like a down in nursing, for at least here for school?
So in terms of the demand for nursing, it's way up.
Oh, yeah.
It's way up. Part of it is because of the shakeout. I mean, it is hard work. You can have compassion fatigue, and some people get scared, right? Like, I don't want to get exposed to COVID. Yeah. But, and so now that shook out a whole bunch of the people that were on the fringe. Like, I don't really want to be a nurse. I kind of like the nurse. I like the pay. I like the flexibility. But so that kind of shook them out. And then now there's even less. But in terms of enrollment or in people wanting to be nurses, I would say that it's down because it really does show, hey, look, you have to care about somebody else, and you have to really be looking for them. You can't just be like, well, I'm just going to do my thing and then get out. There's part of investment issue there. Yeah. Especially with the pandemic having this huge need, being overworked, and with all they keep asking for more money, and the incentivized to leave places is huge. I think I got an offer for, it was crazy, like $6,000 a week.
Wow.
So what do you do with $6,000 a week? I mean, that's a lot.
That's a lot of money.
I mean, that's a lot of money, right? And so you're talking, I mean, that's crazy. And so, and that's for travel nursing. And they're like, hey, just come, just leave your regular position, or just take, just let's go. Granted, they don't tell you all the other stuff that goes along with it, which is isolation, and you're working, a ton of hours, and they're just, but you're thinking, no, is this something I want to do? Maybe I'll just do this for a little bit, and then I'll take a vacation, a long vacation.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of I think it is down. Part of it is because it is a hard job. It does force you to actually care about people, which the pandemic has turned everyone insular or very introspective. Be like, what's my needs? What's I'm in this room and I don't feel loved, or I feel lonely, or like I should do whatever, YOLO. It's my life, and so I think that's part of it. It's the difficult part of nursing.
Yeah. Wow. Very interesting. I've noticed that too with the pandemic. Like, a lot of people have just been kind of focused more on like what they want to do, and just like even on the internet, like the compassion levels for people were already really low, but now I just feel like you have to go looking for it if you really want to see it now, which is I don't know where like the world is going to go after this, because I know they're starting to lift the mask mandates and stuff like that, and so it's just going to be interesting to see how this decade plays out.
I find it strange also. The job is kind of like teaching as well.
Yeah.
You have people that want the result at the end, the outcome, without going through the hard work, right? Like if I said, hey, I'll just give you an A, you don't have to show up. Everyone would be like, well, fantastic. You know? But, or do you say, I am just going to give you what the chance to grow inside your mind, to have a great education, and we're not going to talk about grades. You'd be like, well, I can't come here because if I'm not going to get a grade, I can't move on, right? Like there's this balance of like,
wow.
And so with nursing, it's the same way. It's like you're fighting people. You're fighting people, like students. You could say, hey, let's study a ton, and you're like, but I don't want to study a ton. But do you want an A? Yes, I do want an A. So let's study a ton, but I don't want to do that. And you're like, but they're dichotomously, they're linked together. Like, but I don't want to. It's similar to nursing. You go to a patient, you're like, you know what you need to do? And most people do know. Oh, that means I got to exercise. I got to eat clean. I got to decompress. I got to not work as much. I have to make sure that I'm not smoking. I'm not drinking. Like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of things that would make my outcomes way better.
I
don't want to do that. Just give me the open heart surgery and take care of me. They'll fight you and be like, I can't give you that glass of water right now. Your throat is not ready to drink, and you're going to choke. Well, I'm thirsty now, so I just want water. You're like, okay, hold on. How do I? I'm trying to help you. Why do I have to fight you? And so
exactly.
I think that's part of the difficulty with nursing and teaching as well. You're fighting people to give them what they ask for. I want health. Okay. Well, we're going to do these things. You're going to have to do rehab, and it's going to be tough. I don't want to do rehab. I just want to be better. You're like, that doesn't just come.
Yeah, exactly.
Voila.
Like people want to get to Z when they're at like A, and they don't want to go through the B, C, D,
That's
E,
right.
F, G,
Exactly right.
Yeah, they can't go through the steps. But, like that's like the beauty, I think, of like all overcoming goals in life and challenges and stuff is just once you get there and you kind of look back and you see all that hard work you put in.
That's right.
And then you really feel like that's what is fulfilling about that.
Yeah.
And so like when you went and got all your degrees, how does that feel like when you got that degree in nursing just to better your class that you taught here? Well, how did that feel like when you got that?
Yeah. So that's part of my story where I was teaching here for a while and got this crazy, not idea, but one of those things that where your students keep pressuring you. And I always want to be open. I hope that I'm trying to be open. And they're like, why are you making me memorize all these things? Why are you making sure that I don't, my mom is a nurse and my brother is a nurse, and he says that this doesn't even matter. And so I was like, oh, well, I'm not a nurse. And so how do I, so that's a good question. So maybe I'm over teaching. What am I doing? I want to make sure that I'm equipping you guys for your success.
Yeah.
So when I became a nurse, I noticed that it was like the stakes are way higher, and it wasn't about, oh, I got an A or whatever. It was like, no, everything matters. And I became harder. Actually, I became much harder because people's lives were at stake.
Yeah. And
it wasn't like, oh, I could get 70% right. Like if you got 70% of your patients that died, or 70% lived and 30% died, you would like that's unacceptable.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no way.
Yeah.
So so when I got my degree,
Mm-hmm.
it was more of, it wasn't like a ha ha ha, now I know what it's talking about. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so I feel privileged having this knowledge and going through all those experiences, and now I have a license that allows me to do this, and it's a great privilege to take care of people. So one, it made me feel like now I have both responsibility and the ability to take care of people in a different way. So I felt, it was great to have that. I try not to lord it over people, because what is paper? What is a construct of like, oh, you're qualified, except that it allows me to have a basis to be able to say, hey, look, I'm trying to help you, and I really am, almost like a fiduciary perspective, rather than be like, I could boss you around, ha ha ha, so it was like more of another season in my life, rather than like, hey, I got my degree and now I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's part of what I was been trying to do, and it just enhances what I want to do.
Yeah, part of your story. Yeah. So did you ever have like any other dreams of like doing anything else besides med school? I know it was like kind of put on you with your parents and your culture and stuff, but like, did you ever like want to do anything else growing up?
Yeah. I wanted to play. I wanted to be a vagabond in some senses, because I love hiking, and so I was like, oh, can I be a national park ranger, just to hang out with the bears and being out there? Or I really like sports, specifically I love riding, and so be like, oh, how about if I open a shop of bicycles or just ride bikes? And so I've thought about those things. I thought about trying to do finance, which actually was a strange turn, but as long as you make money, parents are happy. They're like, if you can take care of yourself.
Exactly.
So yeah, I thought about finance, because that could be very, very predatory, and people can get thrown under the bus, or people can be scammed, and just to have that and to provide a service, so things like that. But that's what I thought about. I actually, one other time when I even thought about becoming a minister.
Oh, wow.
So I served as a youth pastor for a couple seasons during the summer in college, and then thought, could I do this full time? And I thought, I don't know. I don't know if this, like that, just that path would be the only. I don't think I would be fully fulfilled. I feel like I've been made for more things than that.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So, yeah, there's a lot of things. You, like, bounced around a lot.
I did.
And I see what you're saying with, like, that finance thing, where, like, it is kind of like a shark kind of mentality, predatory, dog-v-dog, and it seems like you're way more compassionate than that. You know what I mean? Like, way more of a compassionate person.
Right. I don't want to reduce people just to dollars, right? Like,
exactly.
If that's the case, then dollars can go away.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's... Like, I don't even know where to go from that, but like, that's just like you're opening my mind to like so much now, just like talking to you. Cause like, when I go through my life, like I always get caught up in like what I want to do. And like, I only get fulfilled whenever I talk to people and I get enlightened, like how I feel like I am right now. And it's just like, if this is my end goal, like, then I'm already doing it. But like at the same time, it's like, I think I still have more steps to go,
Of course.
And I mean, like, that's just the growth of life. So like, when you were a kid, like, how did you overcome those like struggles of, wanting to do something, going in a different direction, like, did you ever, I know you probably had doubts, everyone has doubts, but like, how did you overcome those kind of things?
Well, as they say, as the sun rises, kids are dumb, so we do dumb things.
Yeah.
And you kind of learn like, oh, okay, I shouldn't have done that. And you kind of get narrowed, right? Like your life, you bounce around all these questions, hey, I want to ride my bike without whatever, I could do that jump, and then you're like, oh, okay, so I know where my limit is.
Exactly.
Like, I don't have that enough skill. So you kind of reel it back to, so maybe I'll go this direction. And so in terms of, so I had my plenty of stories of me being stupid, so making poor decisions, being very uncompassionate, being very selfish.
Yeah.
It did take some people to gently but firmly say, don't be an idiot, man.
Yeah, exactly.
The Michael Scott, he's like, number one rule, don't be an idiot. It's like, what does that mean? It's like, you know what that means, because you're an idiot right now. Where I was like, oh, I would be throwing tantrums at like, you don't understand. I need this now. And it's like, really? Just to be able to get to your volleyball tournament, like it's not, yeah, but I'm a starter, and if they don't have me, then I'm going to, if I don't train exactly, then we're not going to get the state champion. It's like, that's just a plaque on a wall, and next year there's going to be another state champion. It just doesn't, it's like this construct of success versus how am I treating people and what really matters. And so things like that. And so, yes, had a lot of times where learned lessons like that. As I said, I played volleyball a little bit and it was pretty good, but then all of a sudden broke my ankle, training, and then I was like, they just moved on without me. They just, okay, we'll just win state without you. It's like, so what did I contribute to? Well, what did I treat my parents? What did I treat my friends around me? What did I sacrifice to say, I'm going to do this for something that just moves on?
Exactly.
So
yeah, I think it's easy for us, as people to get caught up in like the present and where like everything that's happening in the now rather than, thinking about either the past or the future. Because, I mean, like, we're sitting in front of a camera right now just talking.
Yeah.
And this is going to sit on the internet forever. You know what I mean? It's never going to go away.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, when I'm 60, if I get to that age, I could look back and see, wow, when I went to college and I actually wanted to do this thing and I actually did it. Like, it's going to be like that surreal moment where, but, also like not getting caught up in like, oh, this is the only thing I should do, or this is the only thing that you should do, or you should move on. And I mean, I think it's really cool that, we can connect on that level. Any person, right? Because we all go through that same thing. Right. What do you think was like the hardest thing to overcome growing up? Just like in goals or in doubts in yourself? Like, what do you think the hardest thing was for you to move past or get behind?
That's a really good question.
Thank you.
What was my biggest?
I mean, it's hard to rank them, right?
Of course. I was like, there's a flood of
exactly
things that came in my head.
Mm-hmm.
However, a couple things, I suppose. Overcoming my immaturity, I think. Looking back, as I'm 46, and I look at my 20-year-old self, I thought, why did so many things matter on these topics that now I look back and be like, no. But then, as the Stoics would say, right, we do our best with what we have, with where we're at, with who you are at that time. Like, that's it. Like, at this time, it's just a snapshot. It's a season. And so I could look back and be like, oh, that was really dumb. But it could be like, well, that was pretty formative, and I'm glad that past Sam learned that, and not current Sam, right? Like today Sam. And so I would say part of it is just my immaturity. You chase after plenty of things that you think are huge. If I didn't have a girlfriend in high school, that was the end of the world. You know, if I don't, what does that mean? But now, if you look at the percentage of high school romances actually lasting,
it's got to be under 1%.
It's
right?
very, very low. It's terribly low, and you're like, so all that energy, all that stuff went for what? For nothing, or did it go for something that was more formative, right? That wasn't the end goal, but it was the journey through it that actually lasted for longer, right? Your girlfriends or boyfriends or your other partners are just gone after high school, and then you're like, what do I have left? You're like, well, I have experiences. I know who I am. That's changed from that. I know how to treat people better. I know how to not be as selfish. I know how to be happy, be in charge of my own happiness, not to put that on somebody else. There's all these lessons. So probably immaturity is probably the biggest thing, but that's part of life, right? And then of course, with that immaturity came the guilt of like, well, I should be better. I should be further. I should be. I shouldn't have to struggle with those things. But how else do you grow, right? It's like somebody lifting weights and be like, this shouldn't be hard. It's like, in order for you to lift harder, you have to feel like you're very weak.
Yes.
And so I wouldn't say, so I wouldn't regret those things, but I would say that those are tough to overcome for me. Just to think of like, oh, I should have been better. But then it's like, am I better today? Am I better moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably
the biggest thing to overcome those things, is just to get better, overcome those mistakes. Because when I was younger, I was obsessed with falling in love. Like literally, I wanted it more than anything till I got to high school. Probably is when I finally got off that train of, hey, I should fall in love. I need this compassion. I need someone to validate me and love me. You know what I mean? But it's I feel like, and now I see people like that today as well. And I wish I could go up to them and be like, hey man, you don't need this, right. It's going to happen. The time will come and you'll find the person, but that's all the cliches everyone hears. And is it really like that? Is that really going to help them get over it? Or I'm not too sure, but it definitely helped me get over it, because I feel like there's a point in your life, when you do kind of get over that immaturity of oh, I need the love. And more of I need to love myself and have someone love that person that I'm becoming.
Right.
And since I'm in 20 to 25 is such a transitional period, I feel, where you're becoming more mature version of yourself, and becoming more independent and having your own thoughts and ideas and wanting to speak those things. I feel like it's hard in this generation just because there's a camera everywhere.
Of course.
And everyone that has an idea already and has a bunch of views, it's intimidating. It's very intimidating.
So. Yeah.
But that shouldn't stop you from maturing and doing what you want and saying what you want.
Right.
And that's what this country was founded upon in the first place.
And I think that's part of what, I'll be very honest, and I'm not trying to push anything, but for me, I think part of what allowed me to have that was my faith. And so knowing that Jesus loved me for who I am, not the facade of who I am, which is quite the dance of high school, right? You have to show that you're strong. You have to show that you're confident when you really aren't, or things like that. You have to show a lot of things. But knowing that Jesus loved me for who I was, and not a facade, and that there's grace to fail, and there's grace that even though I was dumb and stupid and very many times just pure out fail, it's not fatal, right? It's not that's where the grace comes in. It's he never left, he's always been faithful. So things like that, those kind of mentalities, and that's partly why I think where I am today is partly because of my faith.
My faith, yeah. Do you mind if I ask, are you a Catholic, Christian, Protestant?
I'm a Christian.
Christian? Okay, yeah. I grew up Catholic.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I went to Catholic school from preschool to first grade, and then after that I went to public.
Ah, nice.
But, and then, my family kind of fell out of it.
Sure.
But I still believed in God and everything like that.
Yeah.
I would say today I'm more on the side of, there's a really good quote by Alan Watts, who's a 1920s philosopher. Yeah. And it was that there's two major ideologies, sorry, I couldn't say that word, that come from the Western Hemisphere, and that is the one that's been around for thousands and thousands of years, and that God exists and he's watching you and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And the other one is the complete counterculture of that he doesn't exist, there is no God, that kind of thing. And so I'm in this border where I think equally, if you think about it, they're equally as true. As humans, logically, if you think about it, both, if you don't have the faith, if you don't have
perception.
Faith, exactly, then there equally could be true. There could be a God, there could be a heaven and a hell and all that, but there also couldn't be one. We could just be here and no one knows why, out of pure cosmic coincidence. And so, how do you think your faith helped you get through those kinds of things, the failures and the goals and all that? Knowing that Jesus loved you, knowing all that kind of stuff. How much involved were you in your life with it?
So as I said, my faith was pretty big in my life because I even almost became a minister. Had a youth pastor, was being a youth minister for a few summers. It did help me to think that there's more than just nothing, which as I read about it, if there wasn't a God, then clearly both absurdism or nihilism, it makes more sense. I mean, it's what I can see, nihilism, right? Nothing matters and everything, no matter how long we do and no matter what we put, it's like Sisyphus, it just disappears, right? Yeah. But then absurdism says, okay, well then you make your own meaning out of that, right? Like you make, because nothing matters, and you just make something out. And it's kind of a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, then it's a construct in my head, and it doesn't give any reason of what's actually good. Like there's no good and there's no bad. There's no, you know, if there's nothing is nothing, then I think about how that's like what Ecclesiastes in the Bible talks about, right?
Yeah.
Meaningless. Everything is meaningless is like the big message in Ecclesiastes. And I could see that that's true. But then I feel like the Bible kind of drew me further and said, hey, look, it could be like Job, right? Now, it's not just nothing, because there's suffering in the world. And I can see that there's suffering in the world, and there's pain. And I can say, not having pain and not having suffering is better than having suffering and having pain. So like that's something. So nothing is. I don't know if I could fully say yes. If I could be as reductionist, sure. Ecclesiastes is true, but then my observation of life is like, yeah, it's not suffering. You know, like that's better. There's a little bit of purpose in life. To not suffer, versus be like, well, whatever happens. And then so, but that's still not very satisfying, right? Like is life either not suffering or just suffering?
Yeah.
And then it comes down to, then I like how the book of Song of Solomon then goes into, well, life is actually about love. And love. And so I was like, I think that is more than just thinking that nothing means nothing. Or everything means nothing. Or it's just more than me just fighting just not to feel pain or not to feel suffering. There's something about life that gives me a chance to love and to be loved. And that's why that's where I feel like my faith kind of led me out of this, well, you know, even if I got to be this one day, it doesn't matter. It's like, well, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things right now. Will it be, is it worse than is it better than having an F and having to redo it? Yeah, like a C is better. But is that just a B, or do I have purpose in that? Do I say, that B is getting me the ability to take care of people, to love better, to be loved better, to, not that I'm validating my existence because of my accomplishments, but am I in a place where I can then be better equipped to love others, and is there a greater fulfillment in that? Is there a greater purpose in that? So like these questions of purpose. So I don't mean to sound like I was a morose teen where I was just always like contemplating life, and but I mean, those are the real thoughts that I had, where it's like, you know, my parents are like, you have to get A's. I'm like, in U.S. history, you know, it's already written down. I can just look it up later.
Exactly.
But then it's like, well, no, there's a thing that where I train myself, that I remember names and I remember lessons from other people, and I could take lessons from other people, not just like the pedantic fact kind of just regurgitating facts. It's like, no, there's a lesson about that. And if the purpose is to love people better, I could do anything and try to do that. It's like spelling bees, right? Like it sharpens my mind so that I remember things that I could take care of. So that I know how to spell well, and that when I give the medication to a patient, it's the right medication instead of one that I was like, I think that's right. So.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. That's a really good explanation for it, you know, and I think, you know, that's the biggest thing with religion, is that it is just all about love. It's all about kind of just bettering yourself and, you know, it should be. It should be, yeah. I feel like all the politics of it kind of jumbles it all up. Yeah, right. And but at the very basis of all the teachings of, you know, it's all about that, being a better human and, you know, to each other. And I feel like, you know, one day we might get there. One day we might. But I don't know if it'll happen in my lifetime. And even if it doesn't, that's okay, as long as I know, like, by the time I go, I did something that can help people, help the world. I know that at least I did good on the rock before I left it. Right. You know,
it's your locus of control, right?
Exactly.
Your locus of abilities.
And so, do you have any like I don't know how to say it, like people that you looked up to when you were, you know, anybody that affected you while you were in college or something like that, or like any like people in your life that, you know, you kind of were like, I wouldn't say put on a pedestal, but more like, oh my gosh, like I would love to meet this person. I'd love to talk to this person, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I don't think I have any celebrity crushes, though I can think of some formative people that went through my life. And all of them have different facets of where I learned some lessons. Like, I remember in high school where I remember this senior when I was a sophomore, and he was part of this youth ministry or like a Bible study in my high school, and I decided to go just one day, and for some reason he had so much joy. He's just like joy, and I thought, what are you talking about? According to my Christian, it seems like most of this is about not having fun. Like, I get, my parents tell me, no, you shouldn't drink, you shouldn't smoke, you shouldn't have sex, you shouldn't blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, don't. Like, so that's what I'm signing up for? This is the faith, and it's just nothing. It's just all rules, and it's just discipline. Great. Sell me more, say more. But this other guy was just like, I just am really joyous. I'm like, how do you have so much joy when you can't do anything, you know? And so he was one of the first ones that actually talked about, well, what's the point of all this? What's the point of Jesus coming down to demonstrate love, that to be loved, that we are then loved, and out of that we can love others, not as a requirement or an obligation. In some senses it is, but that out of the outflow comes your love, not out of your discipline and out of your thing to say, okay, well, why don't I do cocaine or why don't I do heroin? It's like, because then it's like, it's pretty detrimental to both my health and the people around me. I mean, I could suck people into this and that would be bad for them.
Exactly.
So, it's more than just like, don't. It's like, don't hurt yourself, like, it's like, don't kneecap yourself. And so that was like a guy that I was like, wow, he actually has joy in faith. Like, that's weird. That's totally weird, foreign to me, and that was like a disruption in my paradigm, I suppose. And then other people of talking about another guy who was just saying, well, how do I actually love people? And I thought, well, ministry is the way. That's like, that's how the pinnacle is. Like, it's not necessarily a job, right? It's to loving people and to caring for others is not necessarily a job per se, because once it becomes a job, your job, Connor, is to love this person, I'll pay you, and you're like, okay, so if I'm not paid, then I don't love that person? Is that really love, right? Like and so he demonstrated it. I was like, how are you so cool, this guy, and how are you so cool, and you just work a 9-to-5 job? That's like, and he was a bike mechanic, and was he a bike mechanic? Man, all these things. He was a laborer. Yeah. And actually, no, sorry, he was a painter. And so I don't know why I'm getting all this mixed up. Probably because I see these facets in lessons, all this. But the guy was the person that introduced me to painting, and he was like, I could paint this wall, and even though they're probably going to paint it again next year, today I can be a good steward of what I have, where I'm at, with what I can do at this time, and demonstrate love to this guy, to this person who wanted this right now. Yeah. And it's okay. I don't have to be a minister to show love. I don't have to be, to put a collar and then be like, now I can finally show love. He's like, I could paint this guy's wall, and I could do small things, and demonstrate how life have more purpose than just the task in front of me. Yeah. Wow. I think that's a good place to end off right there. All right. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching today. And thank you, Sam Chen. Yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.